Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel. I'm Andrew, with you here as always. This is Go Again, a fabulous video cast covering the trading card game Flesh and Blood. This video and others like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. Please show your support with a like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new videos. If you want to get involved with the channel, consider becoming a channel member. There are many benefits to channel membership, including access to our Discord, exclusive deck tech and strategy videos, and the opportunity to help create channel content. I want to sincerely thank all our channel members, as I truly couldn't do this without your support. You guys rock. Go Commando.
Hello, Flesh and Blood folks. Thanks for tuning in and joining me for tonight's discussion. So this is everybody's well aware at this point. Earlier this week, the Fab community kind of got rocked a little bit with the news coming out of New Zealand by LSS that Crucible of War, or CRU, is done, right? I mean, they're not going to be printing anymore, is what their announcement said. Now, I didn't, quickly jump on and make the news video because I wanted to kind of sit back and, look at the whole thing. I mean, as you guys know, I kind of avoid financial stuff, and that's typically the early type stuff is like, should I go buy? Should I not, right? And that's not really it's not really my jam, right? I want to look more at the game, and I think, pausing and seeing how it's going to play out for players, I think was important. But what that is relevant to tonight's discussion, of course, but I think overall, no reasonable person actually thinks that unlimited means just this constant stream of product coming off the line, right? Like, it's not like printing toilet paper, right? Nobody actually maybe somebody does, but the majority of people don't think about it that way. But the majority of people also, from an unlimited set in a non-rotating format card game, the definition of that, as most people understand it, is that you could go back and print it later. And that's why what was really interesting, and kind of the point here, is they said they will not be reprinting it again, right? So tonight I want to talk about kind of the CRU issue and why LSS should never say never again. Hey folks, real quick, one thing I forgot to mention, the thumbnail for today's video is actually a throwback to a James Bond film. It's the movie poster for Never Say Never Again, which is a James Bond film. That's where the title and the joke came from. That's why the thumbnail looks out of character. Just having a little fun there. Thanks. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again. So tonight's cast is a little different than what you guys are used to. Usually I have a script or, at least well-done bullet points. And tonight I really just wanted to kind of sit and chat about this. We've had a couple days after the announcement to kind of really get our heads around it, let the emotions settle down a little bit for those of us who got emotional about it, and also kind of look at how the rest of the community was reacting. And so what I'm doing tonight, I poured myself a beer. Everybody's in bed, and we can kind of just sit here and talk. If that's not something you're interested in doing, no big deal. Go use your time elsewhere, right? And let's get into this. So what I want to do to kind of set the tone for at least where my head is at right now is I want to ask this question, and it's kind of a farcical question, but what is it about Crucible of War that LSS seems to hate so much? Now, to be clear, I don't think they actually hate the product, right? I think it was a very successful product for them, and I think it did what it did. But, it's hard not to feel that they don't like. It's hard not to feel the way that I'm saying, that maybe they don't like the product, or that there's something about it that's kind of a pain in their, like, that kind of feels like they're like, their stepchild or something that they don't want to deal with, right? And part of the reason I'm saying that is, if you hearken back to, I think it was about a year ago, I think was it going into Thanksgiving weekend or Christmas weekend, one of the two. But they put out a, first edition Crucible War, been sold out for a while. It was pretty hard to find, and people wanted the cards, obviously. And they put up an article going into that, holiday weekend that said there are currently no plans to print an unlimited edition of Crucible of War. And it was a very odd statement, because it was basically like, why would you put, now, I mean, and obviously they, right, so they didn't say they were, in saying there's currently no plans to do it, they didn't say they were never going to do it. But by putting out that article, it basically stoked the fire as if they were never going to do it, right? And then that caused obviously huge ripples, waves. Obviously, they went back and printed unlimited because they didn't officially close the door. And it feels like this is that whole thing again, except that they actually did close the door this time around, right? And that's what I don't really get about this statement, is that they said we're done. Like we're never, I mean, that is what, they didn't use the word never. They said we are, let me quote it exactly so I'm not misquoted. They said in their tweet, Legend Story Studios will not be reprinting Crucible of War. And they said in their article announcement, Legend Story Studios will not be printing Crucible of War again. So they never used the word never, but they said they are never printing Crucible of War again. That's what they said, right? Now, a lot of the discussions in the community that I've seen and listened to around this seem to be pretty hyperbolic, right? So one of the arguments against people who are like, man, like some people are like it's unlimited, and let's be very clear. The majority of people who are reacting negatively to this announcement, meaning they're like, why are you not doing it again, aren't saying that I believe that the majority of these people are not saying we need this constant stream coming off the line. That's not what people are saying. What people are reacting to, I believe, is the statement of we're not going to do it again. Because again, why would you close the door to that, right? I mean, no one expects, I mean, we all know things are printed in batches. That's how it's done, right? So if you have a non-rotating, like Fab is a non-rotating game, why would you not leave the door open to go print that later, right? No one, again, to be very, very clear here, because this is one of the big things, they're like, well, in the announcement, it said it was coming in 3 waves, July 30th, August 30th, and September 30th. They told us it was only coming in 3 waves, but that's actually not what they said. They said it was coming in 3 waves. They didn't say there would be no waves after that, right? So yes, while they told us it was coming in 3 waves, the unlimited edition, they didn't say those would be the only waves forever. And again, so from a finance side, I'm not saying, oh, if they'd told me that it was never coming in, I would have gone out and bought more, because I wouldn't have. I have, let's be very clear, let's just close my position. I have what except for Crater Fist, I have everything I think I want out of the set, maybe some fine centers too, but you get my point. I'm in a very good position personally from Crucible of War. So this is not motivated just by the fact that I don't have the cards I want, right? Or it's not I'm missing out on buying boxes, because that's just not my thing, right? It's not the finance thing. I'm just saying that they didn't, just because they said it was coming in 3 waves doesn't mean that it was coming in only 3 waves, right? And that's been one of the things that's really, and that's kind of where I was going with this line of thought anyways, one of the things that's really rubbed me the wrong way about the community reaction to this, kind of in both sides, is the pure hyperbolicity, is that a word? People using the extremes, right? And that's the point, is they're like, well, you idiots, they're not going to just be reprinting it. There's not going to be some dude in a wasteland sitting there printing it. That's not what people are saying. People are, I believe, people are reacting to the fact that they said it will never happen again, right? Not that they expect this constant stream, going to the factory and just buying a pack. So anyway, I think I've said enough about that part, right? But, that's been one of the things that's really struck me about this is how, aren't we supposed to be friends? Why are we attacking each other? If someone has a problem with something or feels that way, I don't understand why really, someone thinking that an unlimited edition would mean the door would be open to go back and reprint it at a later time if it was necessary to do so, doesn't mean that there's some crazy person who expects a post-apocalyptic cards to be coming off the line, right? And obviously, 50, let's say Fab makes it another 30 years, I hope it does, no one expects them to be constantly printing, what would it be, 90 sets by then, right? No one expects that, right? So, and I think it's unreasonable to, because I've seen people say that. It's well, if it's, I saw one specifically, it was well, if it's 2070, they can't be reprinting 500 sets constantly. It's no one's saying that, right? That's not what anybody's saying, right? So anyway, the point about this from the player standpoint is, Well, let's skip that part. Well, not skip that. We'll come back to that part. My thing about them saying never, all it did was stoke what's happened this week, which is made a run on it. The product, the sealed product, and people have been buying up, not so much the rares and stuff, but I've got some graphs. People have been buying up let's go ahead to. We're on the conversation. So what I'm showing up right now is the last quarter's worth of data off of TCG players for solds for Crater Fist. And what you see is that it was relatively flat-ish in the 20 to 30 range until the announcement happened, and then people started buying them up, and it shot up to 80. It's dropped down a little bit, but again, there's not very much data on the last few. There's not much data on the last one, but it does appear to be dropping down a little after the initial spike. But I don't think many of us would expect it to come back down to that 20-30 range. But there's no question that the announcement caused a run. That's what we've seen just by looking at it and observing it, but here's some actual data that shows the spike. I also pulled the data for Courage of Bladehold. Interesting, Courage of Bladehold, I didn't realize how much it had trailed off. I guess just Warrior, because Boltyn, right? So, but yeah, so that's probably why it was so much higher. But 70, it had come down to 40, and then again, you see that, I don't really want to have the finance discussion about why it's been trailing off. Obviously it's because Boltyn was fun, but wasn't doing as well as other people. But then it popped up to 70. But interestingly on Find Center, because I pulled that data because I don't have my Find Centers yet, right? But on that one, it was 15. It kind of spiked in early September as people were likely getting their Katsu decks ready to go for Road to Nationals. And then that one really, maybe it spiked a couple bucks. That's kind of hard to tell with the noise. But again, even if the cards only, even if the Majestics and the rares, well, rares obviously would have gone up $4, but you know what I'm saying, right? Even if the lower cards have only gone up a couple bucks, it's really not that big of a deal, right? From the player standpoint, it's not that big of a deal. But the other two cards, the bigger, the legendaries and stuff popping up, because those are the harder ones to find. That's just pure investment right now. Nobody cares necessarily about Ashiana. It is a little bit of a bummer that Tunic, because of Tunic going out of print, it's a little bit of a bummer that Tunic won't get a little lower and more affordable, I think, for most players, because that card's pretty important, right? So again, I don't want to get too bogged down on the finances, but there are impacts of this, and kind of moving into one things I hinted at, the run on boxes is basically just fueling, it's a FOMO, fear of missing out type of deal, right? And I don't believe it's an accident on LSS's side that they chose the timing to do it now, which is probably going to coincide within some short time period of an announcement of another set. And while, everyone seems so convinced that it's going to be another supplemental set, that hasn't actually been confirmed yet, and I think it probably will be, because it's been hinted at before that was their pattern, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. But again, we expect it to be, and I do think that the timing of this is a little suspect, that they're probably trying to make Fab seal. Again, if you go back a year ago, there was no reason for them to put out an article that said we're probably not going to do Crucible Unlimited. And there was no reason for that other than to just make noise. And this is kind of the same thing. Why close the door to begin with? And B, why post it other than to actually try and get something out of it? Right. And that's what I feel like is actually happening right now, is they're trying to make this run on it. They're trying to have press. Good press is bad press is good press, and good press is good press. Right. So they're trying to get people talking about it before they announce the set and people start putting their pre-orders in. I don't even think that's really a tinfoil hat thing. I think that's kind of just smart business. Right. So, I don't work for them. I don't know what the conversations are being had, but it seems pretty reasonable that that's kind of their angle here, right? Because again, I don't see why. If they never plan on printing Crucible of War again, fine, but I don't understand why they would say never on an unlimited set, right? So, and then further down the line, when they start reprinting these cards in future sets, we're like, okay, probably we're never going to see Crucible of War again. And then we as a community move on. But again, I think they're very focused on certain parts of, I do think they care about the investor side of things. I mean, they've said they do. And that's fine. I mean, it's not my jam, but that's fine. And it keeps the game going. So it's fine. I just, again, I don't understand why they would close the door. Because what's happening right now is, I mean, let's say this next, right? Imaginary Fairyland, because this is not going to happen, by the way. Let's say the next set that comes out is like 1,000 cards, and it's basically all the good stuff from Crucible you needed reprinted, and a whole bunch of stuff to support the other elementals and the trait, the light shadow, right? So, I mean, any supplemental set's definitely going to be light shadow and elementals, no question there. Maybe it's got courage, maybe it's got the Krunic 2, right? Maybe it's all in there, right? Okay. So that's all in there. Like, that's still 4 to 5 months off, right? Maybe I mean, because they're sets, I mean, that we've already seen the Shadow post article that it would be Q1. So, like, even if it comes out mid Q1, by the time, with all the distribution problems and everything we've consistently been having and the delays to actually, not necessarily the first release, but in order to get like enough product to people, and then the unlimited version of that or whatever, like, we're potentially looking at anywhere between 4 to 6 months. Like, that's a long time for people to not be able to get their stuff. Now, I want to be very clear here, right? If you compare Flesh and Blood to any other card game in terms of like deck amount, I'm not saying Fab is unreasonably expensive, but what I am saying is, as a new player, you're looking up and you're like, oh, because the equipment does, like, you start with I get it. The equipment's more usable or whatever amongst other people. Well, not class specific, but the equipment feels more important than any other, to me at least. And I believe to most people with the way they approach it, because you start with that in play, the equipment feels more important than the cards in your deck. Now, I know that from a player standpoint, functionally, that's not true, right? But because that's what you start with every game, the equipment definitely feels more important. And if you sit down and you look at like a Crater Fist, for example, and you're like, I have to spend $70 for this one card, that's a barrier. It is a barrier to entry, not necessarily financially, but it is a mental barrier to entry to sit down and look at like, whoa, to even try this guy, I've got to get a Crater Fist, and I've got to get a Tectonic Plating, and I've got to get a Skull Cap, and it just starts adding on, and then you're like, okay, well, I can play without Command and like, because you can. I don't have one. I don't have a Command and Conquer, right? But like, you can play without it, but you start looking at these decks, and again, it's no different than any other game. I'm not saying that it's worse than any other game. But I am saying that if you were to go play Magic or whatever, I mean, I hate using that because, it has emotions, but like, there are other games out there where you can go get a better entry product that is, the Blitz decks are great as an entry product, but like, they don't take you very far, right? And the next thing you want to do to that Blitz deck is like maybe fill out some of your rares. And then you're going to start looking at your equipment and you're like, wow, so I can get by my $13 Blitz deck. I can trick it out for like 30, for a total of $30, I can have a pretty decent deck that's still using garbage equipment. Now I want to go look at my equipment. Well, now it's a $300 to $400 thing, right? And that's being largely driven by the legendaries. But now it's being driven also. I mean, some of these Crucible Majestics are worth more than the legendary equipment from Monarch, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, as at least right now. So, from a player standpoint, I do think that, to existing players, let's say it this way. I think that to existing players who are only like to player focused people, I think the impact right now of what happened this week with Crucible is pretty minimal. But to future players for the next 6 months-ish, I think the impact is real. Because, and then we say, someone now is going to counter and say, well, but you can, have them go pick up the Tales of Aria Unlimited stuff and they can play those new heroes. Great. But then what do we all say? We all say, let's go teach people how to use Welcome to Wrath heroes, right? So then they're like, okay, well, I'm going to pick up Bravo because everybody says Bravo's really good and he's pretty easy to learn and I can swing hammers for days. But now I'm looking at an equipment package that is, $400. And I don't know if that's what it probably does, right? Between Tectonics, 120 or something like that. I don't know what it is the day I'm shooting this, but we know Crater Fist is in the $70 range now. So you're already like, yes, well, okay, so it's probably, depending on what, because you can use the helm. So, okay, so it's probably 200 let's call it $200. I think that's being stingy, but let's call it $200. Okay, that's, you go from buying a, $30 deck to spending $200 on equipment. I don't know. It's an ongoing challenge with Flesh and Blood, but the point is I do believe that the action that was taken, whether intentional or not, right? But I do believe that the result of the announcement earlier this week by LSS that it's never going to happen, right? I think that caused waves because, let's think about it this way, right? If they hadn't posted the announcement saying we're never going to do it, think the third wave that's on the way would have just come in and it just kind of would have, prices would have gone up over time, right? But it would have been over time. It wouldn't have been a bunch of people who are now sitting on multiple copies of Crater Fist because they could get on TCG Player first, right? And are now sitting in a white cardboard box, a white BCW box, waiting for somebody else to cough up the money. That sucks, right? That's because that is what's happened. There's no question about it, right? And good for them, right? If they can turn it into money, more power to you. Like, I'm a capitalist. Go to town, buddy, right? But that wouldn't have happened if LSS hadn't made this announcement. And that's kind of my issue here is, again, I don't think the announcement was necessary. And I think the announcement was actually damaging to their players. So it kind of questions what the ultimate motive was. And, there's other stuff going on too that's like, well, it's kind of odd, but that's on the finance side, and I don't really want to touch that, right? But it's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to not think that this was intentional, and if it was intentional, then why? Because the people who benefit are the people who are going to go out and. I've made my case, I think, right? So, again, obviously, the people who didn't want to listen to this aren't here at this point. And but I do want, for those who are still here, I want to make it very clear, no one reasonably thought that Unlimited was going to be unlimited in the, full sense, right? No one actually thought that, but closing the door to it is weird. And I believe that if they stop, right now it feels like there's a little bit of an Arcane Rising shortage. At least that's what it feels in my area. So maybe they're out and they're waiting for another print wave of Arcane Rising or something like that. I don't know. It seems like there's enough online. It's just, around here we can't find them as well. But the Welcome to Wrath and Arcane Rising, if they stop reprinting those and they come out and say we're never reprinting those again, we'll see the same thing, probably worse, right? But that's probably not, that's not entirely fair because I'm almost positive, your CNCs and your Easter eggs, those have to be reprinted, right? At some point in the future. They don't have to be. But I would imagine they would be. So, I don't know. But I can't imagine not. Again, we as a community knowingly steer our new players to the base heroes, the base 8, whatever. It's really kind of like the base 6, right? So we steer them to that. but then the cards aren't there for, it's like, because you want to steer a new player there and also have it be affordable. And I don't necessarily feel that, like, if what happened to Crucible becomes the new thing, I don't know. I mean, and to be clear, I think they probably will continue to keep WTR and Arc. I think those will probably stay in perpetuity. I mean, again, they can't just keep a million lines open every time they add a new set. No one's asking for that, right? But again, to go in and close the door. Anyway, we've put this to bed, but I just wanted to be clear. I'm not asking that they keep a line running. That's not what I'm asking. And a lot of this is just people going back and forth based on what they want. But I'm trying to take a step, because like I said, it doesn't personally affect me really all that much. But I think from a player standpoint, I think we're going to look back maybe in 6 months and be like, yeah, it does feel hard when, like, my guy who wants to play Bravo, or even Oldhim, right? Like, doesn't Oldhim run? I think Oldhim runs the Crater Fist, right? So, like, that's relevant. I mean, there's other stuff for sure, but, like, I think he does. And you can run Goliath Gauntlets or whatever. Like, I get it, but yeah. So I don't know. I guess we can wrap this up. I thought I had a lot more bullet points, but I'm looking over now, and I guess I got through all of them, or I forgot to write stuff down. So it is what it is. But let me know what you guys are thinking too, right? I mean, I'm not really interested in a full. I'll be frank. I'm not really interested in a full, like, financial rundown or anything. But why do you guys think? There's two questions I have for you guys, right? One, why do you think they decided to say never? And then the second is, why now, right? Those are really the questions I have. And I think that if we really reflect on it, again, LSS can do, they need to do what they need to do to keep the game alive. Like, they need to make their money so they can keep the game alive. So more power to them. They've made a lot of good decisions. I'm on board, right? I'm going to keep playing Fab. But I think these are odd decisions from a player-based standpoint. I think they are decisions that definitely favor investors. Like, basically no question about it to me. So, like I said, let me know. I would really like to hear counterpoints on why it made sense to say never. I would like to hear a counterpoint on why now was the right time to do it, as opposed to, or maybe now not the right time, but, like, why is making the announcement the right thing to do versus just not doing it, right? So, because, again, like, we don't know their logistics, and we don't need to know their logistics, right? I mean, if, like I had said earlier, if they decided to just reprint half of CRU in the next set, we'd all be like, oh, sweet. Well, players would be like, sweet, we don't need CRU anymore. Actually, everybody would be happy, right? Because you're getting what you need, and the investors would be like, okay, they're not doing this anymore. The old CRU boxes, I'm just going to keep them sealed because that's where the value is going to be, right? And then everybody's happy. But again, by them coming out and saying never, all they really did was just start this mad rush for free stuff, right? I mean, that's really it. So anyway, let me know where I'm going wrong here. Like, why am I wrong? I mean, clearly there's a reason they did this, and I don't understand what it was, other than to just kind of get people ready. So let me know what I'm missing here. Anyway, we've been here for 20 some odd minutes, so time to wrap it up. But thanks, folks, for joining me tonight. I'll be back with a regularly scheduled, more organized cast tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then, and go Commando.